fishing, it's in my soul.
Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way. And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Hello, Salt Strong Nation. Joe Simons, like diamonds. Got Luke Simons, like diamonds. We are here talking about trolling motors. You know, we bought that Salt Strong boat, the Pathfinder, loving the Pathfinder, not really loving the trolling motor. And we're going to talk about the whole story, the pros, the cons, what happened, and to kind of give you a 30,000 foot view if you kind of missed some of the comments on some of the videos. So the boat's not even a year old as we're recording this. And this happened many months ago. It came with what trolling motor, Luke? What specific one from?
So that one in particular. So we'll talk about the bigger boat, the 24 Pathfinder, and then I have a skiff too. And so we'll talk about pairing up motors and MotorGuide versus Minn Kota. So the one that came with the Pathfinder that is now still in the shop for 4 months plus now is the MotorGuide XI5. So this is their newer one. It's the more powerful one. It's the 36 volt. Thing packs a punch, and it's their one with the the wireless remote. So it's basically the highest end motor guide. And with the frustration that we had on not having an ETA there's 4 parts that messed up. Granted, we used it hard, so we used it hard
but for only 5 months.
That's right, but it got a lot of abuse in 5 months. But we had issues with getting parts have been really tough. So we ended up getting the highest end Minn Kota. It's called the Ulterra, just because it was the only one we can actually find. That we found one in stock. And so and now I've had a chance to use it for a good while. And so we'll talk about the pros and the cons. They're just like everything. There's not like a one thing where, hey, you have to get this. A lot of it's situational. And so we'll talk about the ins and outs there.
Yep. And one of the beauties of Salt Strong is that we do not have any sponsors. We do not have any advertisers. We report to you. Our audience, our insider members, you guys are it. You're our boss. That's who pays us, right? So, whereas all these other sponsored and guides and the TV shows, they have one brand, that's all they can use. Even when they're mad, like we've been really mad about this motor guide situation, we can tell you like it is. And so we're not going to sugarcoat it. We're not sponsored by either. And it was very frustrating, I will say. I'm going to be very clear, Luke. You said like we used and abused it. That doesn't mean that we were doing anything wrong. Like we weren't sitting there like jamming it, in sand doing dumb stuff. We were just using it. But we used it, more than a weekend warrior who might use it, twice a month. We were using it a couple times a week. So all we did was just use it, like the recommended way to use a trolling motor. Nothing else. We weren't going offshore and doing it in 5-foot swells. Like it was just using it. And 4 different parts break. And I get the COVID thing. We're dealing with the same stuff. So we can be sympathetic from that. But to me, even the customer service thing was not good. If I'm a motor guide, and I hope you guys are listening, all of you, that are in trolling motors, power poles, etc. Customer service is a massive part. That's why so many people have power pole. They're not perfect, but they have the best customer service out there, right? It's tough not to like power pole because they go above and beyond. And if I was motor guide and I'm getting calls from people that have a big audience, like they might be losing a lot of business from this podcast because we're now kind of saying the motor's not the best. It literally broke down 4 different pieces in 5 months. And it was just like, oh yeah, we don't really care that you guys make a living on the water. And it was just almost like, yeah, it'll happen when it happens. And it's super frustrating, right? And it's one thing to like, yeah, it's going to take a month. We're now on month 4 and we still have no idea when a brand new motor that's still under warranty is going to even have a chance of getting fixed, to the point we had to go spend $3,000 of our own money to go buy another one, their competitor. And now we're giving them some love because theirs actually works. And I don't know, it's very, very frustrating. So I hope both Minn Kota and MotorGuide are listening to this and you guys can have a takeaway. And the same with us. Like it's the reason we invest so much in customer service and have, multiple people, not just, real Americans answering the phone and giving you real updates and tracking numbers and stuff. There's just nothing more frustrating than buying something, especially we're talking thousands of dollars for a troll motor, and not work, and it goes kaput in a short amount of time, and you can't even get even a close to an answer. So I'm off the soapbox there, but I thought that was incredibly frustrating. And we're not the only ones. We've heard that from even some other guides and stuff like that. I make a living on this, and like we're telling Peter Deeks, he's like, yeah, it's like that's why I got to have 3 trolling motors just on me at any given time. He's like, it's really, really tough and frustrating. So.
Yeah, just from calling around, right? I was calling a bunch of different service places. So we haven't. I tried to reach out to MotorGuide, never heard anything direct. But again, we're not sponsored, so we don't have any contacts there. Yep. But just from calling around all the different troll motor repair shops, they're basically like, oh, okay, like, you know, which motor is it? Like, oh, MotorGuide. Oh, this is going to take a while. Like, I guess the parts situation has been really bad on MotorGuides, but it's still not. Kind
of like saying you got an Evinrude. Oh, that was a low blow. That was a low blow.
But it's still not. It's still not great. It's still not like all butterflies with Minn Kota, because they're having issues too. There's just not as many, and the wait periods aren't quite as long. But there's wait periods for everything. So just wanted to make sure that was out there.
Yeah. Sorry, Dad, for the low blow. Our dad's got an Evinrude.
I think I like that motor. It's been good, but I would say how should we start? I want to do the pros and cons of the different ones and talk about the different one I have on skiff.
Yep.
So what do you think? What should we start with?
Well, I mean, we already talked about, some of the issues. I'll let you lead this one, because, you've had a motor guide on the skiff as well. And that's old. I mean, you've had a lot of problems, but you also had a lot of fun times with it. So talk about pairing. What would you pick today, knowing what you know today? What would you pick for certain boats? We'll talk about a skiff, and we'll talk about a bay boat like our 24-foot Pathfinder.
Okay, let's do that. So we got to show. We just bashed MotorGuide pretty good, and so let's show an example where the motor guides have outperformed everything else that I found so far. And so this is on the skiff land. So the skiff in particular, I have a 17-foot Maverick. It's now called the Mirage. At the time I bought it, it's HPX-V. So it's a shallow running boat. It'll float in like probably 8-9 inch draft. And for trolling motors and for the shallow water stuff, this is when I do not like the little iPilot, the little anchor button thing. That is the best way to scare a bunch of fish. If you're up on a real shallow flat, those fish are going to be spooky. And even just those buttons, when like the thing, when it's like turning, that noise can significantly decrease your fish catching. And I've seen it, because even getting the Pathfinder, our dad has a 23-foot Key West with the little, the motorized motors, and just the movement of those, and then having to go from one button to the next, it gives a little pulse. In deeper water, it doesn't matter, right? But when you're in like 1.5 foot water, a little pulse is a big deal. And so, especially if you're drifting and you hit that anchor button. I mean, I've fished with a ton of people who have that motor, and we're in a drift, have a good spot, and they hit that lock button to keep us in that spot, and you can see wakes shoot off because all those fish are gone. That's where power poles are very effective. You hit that little motor, and the pole goes down, and the boat will slowly kind of stop. You do not want any pulses. So for the long story short, for the skiff, I purposely got the motor guide. In this case, I got the X5. So it's the newest one. It doesn't have the I in there. The I stands for it's for the wireless ones. I don't know what I actually stands for, but I got the X5. So that's the tiller, right? It has that little hand control thing where when I'm stalking some fish up on the flats, I can just do very tiny gradual movements and not spook fish. I mean, to the point where it's almost as good as pulling, but 1,000 times easier than pulling. And another reason why I like motor guides is because they have the 3-bladed prop, which has a smaller diameter. So that means if I'm up on a shallow grass flat, I'm now not clipping the grass, and I'm not cavitating, right? There's going to be the little window there of hitting the bottom or the grass blades, and you can't cavitate either. You can't hit the surface because that's going to cause a lot of noise. And so that 3-bladed prop, you get the same amount of power with a smaller diameter. So for that reason, I recommend the MotorGuide motors, because they score both. And it's quiet. It doesn't have the huge power shift movements, and it has the small diameter where you can get up and get on that shallow grass flats without clipping the grass and making noise from clipping grass or cavitating.
You just got to make sure. Go for it.
I was going to say that's where like the MotorGuide has been the best, because I did a lot of research and I didn't see anything else that was able to do that. So
yeah, you just got to make sure you know which direction when you're using the little hand goes forward and backwards, as I've learned a few times. It's just tough, you know. Sometimes you're right-handed and all of a sudden it's switching, going backwards, and like, wait a minute, is that left? Should go backwards, right, forwards. Oh boy.
Yeah, it just takes a little bit of time. And when you are selecting a trolling motor, obviously you need to think about the length of the shaft. So like on the flats boats, you don't want to have like a 72-inch shaft, because that's going to be way, like if you have to raise the motor up to get on the shallows, now you have like an obstacle. The motor is going to be like probably chest level, and you're going to have to be like casting around the trolling motor stuff. You don't want that. So for the skiff, we just have actually it might be 50-inch. I can't remember, but there's a bunch of diagrams online. I'm going to pull one up just to go through it.
Yeah, and let's go over that, because that's something a lot of people face is while you're looking that up. Do you need me to set you as a co-host or?
Oh, we can just talk over it.
Okay. But even just the mounting it, right? Because, you know, we had a different size motor guide, and then we had to go out there and buy this Minn Kota, and we were a little bit worried because it was the 72 or whatever. And then even just, you know, where Luke docks it and stuff, like, man, is this going to get in the way and be you know, almost impossible to park? It's gonna be hanging off a foot off the side. So talk about that too. Your experience of having to mount that sucker.
Yeah. So I didn't actually mount any of them. So the mounts came with the boat, so I didn't mount them, but it's really about selecting the right size. And obviously whoever mounts it, you probably should get it done by a professional, because there's a lot of science and reasoning why it just needs to be. And when it actually deploys, ideally it's in the middle so that you can effectively navigate. But so this one little chart here. So for the skiff, I actually have a 50-inch. I misspoke earlier. And what came with the Pathfinder was a 60-inch, and that worked great. And so when I was looking to replace the MotorGuide, since it was in the shop for so long and I didn't know how long it would be to get a new one, and thankfully we ended up finding one. The only one available, literally the only trolling motor I could find that was actually in stock, ready to go, that I called a ton of places, was this Minn Kota Ulterra, which is a very nice motor. It's the high-end Minn Kota, but it was a 72-inch shaft. And so I was actually like really hesitant to pull the trigger, because like, I don't know if that's an extra foot of shaft length, right? That's a lot of extra distance. And now after using it a little bit, I actually like it a little bit better. So there's a pros and I like it better for a certain situation. I like it less for another situation. So where it's better is we're doing a lot more near shore reef fishing. And now you can jam that thing all the way down. And now as the waves get bigger, you're not cavitating. So that's been actually really helpful. So if you're going to be doing some near shore reef fishing, I would say go a little bit over the recommended, because this was actually out of the recommended range too. The 60-inch is what the boat's recommended for. I like the 60-inch better for fishing up on the flats, because then, as I mentioned before, right, you got to get that motor above the grass. And if you're in a foot and a half of water, you got to get that thing basically right at the, like, where it's just barely not cavitating. And that 72-incher, when I do that motor's like, it's not quite chest high, but it's pretty close, and it becomes an obstacle for casting. So as far as the length, you don't have to go by the recommended, but I would say if you're going to be doing more near shore fishing than super shallow water, go on the longer spectrum of the recommendation, or even go over it like we did. But then if you're going to be doing only shallow stuff where it's never going to be like super crazy big waves, it's going to be pretty constant, where it's not super wavy, then go on the smaller side, on the shorter side, I should say. So that's really what I've seen so far. So let me pull up that thing. I'll show you. So the recommended, so this is all about the bow to the water line. That's what they measure, right? So the water line to the actual bow where the mount is. So we'll just go, like, if you're assuming you're having a bay boat. So our bay boat, it's I measured it. I think it was 32. It was either 32 or 34 inches. That's, again, from the water line to the bow, to the top deck of the boat where the thing's mounted. And for that, they recommend a 54-inch to 62-inch shaft. And so that's going to be in most bay boats. So like the 60-inch shaft is probably the most popular. And then the 72-inch recommended shaft length, that is for 34 inches to 44 inches of the bow to water line. That's a pretty high boat. And so again, I was really nervous going with that longer one, even because it was out of the range, but it's actually doing, I'm actually very glad that we got it. Again,
does it show exactly where you're measuring? What is it, just the bottom lip of the bow? Is it actually where the mount is or would be?
There's just like a very, very basic little chart, but it's basically from the deck, like wherever the motor's mounted on that deck to the top to the surface.
Got it.
And it obviously doesn't have to be perfect, right? This like there's a foot long gap between each one. But just think about that, right? If you're going to be using it in water where up on the bow, right, when that bow is going up and down from waves, and you're trying to spot lock, you're trying to stay on one spot, in particular for near shore reef fishing, a really bad thing to happen is for that thing to cavitate. On every time it goes up, that motor's going to be spinning. It'll probably burn up the motor, like what happened with ours, because it'll go from no friction at all, or like no force at all on it, where it's just free spinning, and then all of a sudden it hams that water, and it's got to be terrible for a trolling motor to go through that. So go longer on that. But if it's all shallow stuff, the longer the shaft, now it's going to impede your casting. So that will be, I'd say, the decision point there.
All right, so we both agree we love Pathfinder. We'll probably get another one. Just been a phenomenal boat. Love the Yamaha on the back. But if you do it over again, what would you pick? Knowing what you know now.
Well, as of right now, I would go with a 72-inch shaft.
Okay.
Just because it opens up that extra layer for the reef fishing. So, and it doesn't really get in the way. It doesn't get in the way nearly as much as I thought on the deck of the boat. That was my biggest worry, because the amount of they set the puck on the boat, and it has a quick release bracket, and they set that puck for a 60, and so they basically set it so that the angle, it doesn't stick too far off the edge of the boat. And so I was just looking at it as like, man, like an extra foot is going to take it, off the edge. And yes, it does, but it's really not that bad. Like, you can still dock, no problem. It's a little bit in the way, but I think the advantage, that the pros outweigh the cons.
Cool. So go with the 72-inch shaft. What about brand? You do it all over again.
Well, probably for the bigger boat, I would say probably Minn Kota. Just from hearing the feedback from all the stores, that I don't know if it's temporary or not, but at least as of right now, the time that we're recording this, the service side, like if the motor does break down, and I'm sure the Minn Kota is going to break down at some point, but at least as of right now, the wait time on getting it back in action is definitely going to be shorter with Minn Kota versus MotorGuide. So for that reason, I would say that. But I've had a MotorGuide on the skiff forever. I've had this thing 10 plus years. Granted, I've gone through a few trolling motors, but I use it hard. Like I do mostly power fishing, where I'm up going really fast until I get in there. Then I go super slow and be really quiet. So I've been hard on trolling motors. I'm definitely not very easy on them, but that MotorGuide, again, just given that smaller blade diameter, that I'll still go with that on the skiff, knowing that I might have issues if it messes up. But the cool thing about the tiller type, right, there's less stuff that goes wrong. Yeah. So it's I really haven't had any issues. Actually, I'll say I've never had an issue at all I've gone through 3 MotorGuides. I guess I've had it for like 15 years now. But I've gone through 3 different motors, but they've all lasted a long time, like way over the warranty period, and like 0 issues at all. And then it's usually been like me not taking care of. Like I didn't realize that it was bad to charge the motors up charge the batteries up with the trolling motor plugged in. And that's actually a really bad thing. So I was basically ruining the motor without knowing it, and it still lasted a while. So the cool thing about the tiller style is there's just less things that go wrong. Yep. Whereas the con though with this Ulterra, so this is the one that has a fancy remote, right? It looks cool, does all sorts of cool stuff. I still haven't even figured out a lot of it. And you click a button and it actually deploys itself, right? So because the motorized deploy, so that's it's cool, but it's one thing that's going to break at some point, and it'll probably break sooner than later.
Especially with saltwater.
Yeah.
Just one more thing.
We went fishing with one of our members. one of our lifer members, and it was up north. So he had a nice boat, and so the decision was made. We're going to go up there and fish with him out of his boat. And like literally like the morning of, like the night before, he's like, "Oh, I've got terrible news. His deploy, the automatic deploy, got stuck, and so now like troll motor's done, right? So you have to get it fixed." So that's just, and I don't think there's a manual way to get around it. So like our dad has the Minn Kota. It's not the Ulterra, it's one of the other two, but it's the iPilot, but it doesn't have the automatic deploy. And we had some deploy issues, but it's fixable, right? You can actually just manually lift it up, worst case, and then we figured out how the latch works, and now we can just manually take it up and down. So going the non-Ulterra route might be a little bit smarter, to be honest, because it's just one less thing to go wrong. And that it's a touchscreen. It's out in the boat now. I wish I would have brought it in, but the control is a touchscreen and it is very sensitive. And there's been multiple times where I'm doing something and fishing, and then like the wind will blow the remote and it'll like hit my stomach, or maybe I'll accidentally hit it with my hand and it signals a command. And now all of a sudden, like I've actually had multiple times where I'm fishing and all of a sudden the motor starts coming up like right in my face. I'm like, what's going on here? I never told it to do that.
All I did was hiccup.
Yeah. So that's been, the fancier you get, right? The more options, the more stuff it does, the more stuff it breaks, and the more complex it gets. So I kind of like the remotes, like the basic remote that there's not a touch screen where you have all the buttons, and then you can eventually get accustomed to grabbing the remote. And if you see a fish, right, you can grab the remote and you know exactly what each button does just by memory, and then you can control it without looking. The touch screen, you can never do that, because it depends on what screen you are and then how far you've scrolled up on this thing. So the Ulterra is awesome, but I would say if we could do it again, I almost would go with the one below that, whatever that is. But
Minn Kota, the one like Dad has, just less, not the auto deploy. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, it's funny. I went over to Freedom Boat Club there in the Chain of Lakes, and I remember they used to have a couple of the automatic bimini tops. There's a lot of pontoon boats and stuff to the lakes, and when you go through the chain, you have a lot of low bridges. You got to take the bimini down, between each lake when you go through the canals. And it was nice. You literally hit a button and boom. I mean, beautiful bimini comes all the way up, comes all the way down, one button, auto deploy, basically super nice. And I realized they're all gone. It's now all manual. I asked the guys, like, what happened? Like, oh man, that was a nightmare. Like one, you get, a bunch of knuckleheads using it and abusing it, and hit it, and forgetting it's up. It was like, they all broke. It's like, we're just going 100% manual, because it was just one more thing in a boat that can break, and it will. And when it does, it was like, you couldn't even move it manual. It was like no way to get it out, and to get it up and down. So, it was interesting. They literally got completely rid of them, and it was a more expensive option to have it automatic. And now it's just all manual for the business.
But if you have like a bad back, like if you're physically not able to go, and because when it's not automatic, now you have to lean down and unlatch it and all that stuff. If you do have bad back, like it's a game changer, because literally it is super convenient to like literally just hit the button and it goes down. And then when you're done fishing, you can actually go back to the helm and get the rod set up, and then just at your own leisure, just click that little button and it pops right up. And it's pretty, it is very convenient, but I'm curious to see how long it'll last. I did have issues setting it all up. Like it was more complex. And so you have to, the actual deploy is, you have to like double tap it perfectly. Otherwise it won't register, and then it won't happen. Like when I first set it up, I thought it was wrong because I couldn't get it to deploy. And I went to a shop where we've been getting our troll motors fixed, and chatted with the guy, super nice, came out, and because my assumption was that it was just I was doing something wrong, and sure enough I was. But he just mentioned since given all the extra mechanical parts, is just to be very, very diligent in washing off with fresh water after every trip, because there's just a lot more stuff that can corrode, and so that's one thing I've been really mindful to do, is to just. And I do that with all of them, right? It's better to wash everything down and make sure there's no salt in there that's corroding stuff. And that should help the longevity be as good as possible.
Yep. Cool. Hopefully this was helpful, guys. We did this because we've had a ton of questions of people who have noticed in our videos, hey, why don't you have that motor guide anymore? And Yeah, this is not supposed to be a sermon or anything. We're just telling it like it is, and we love your feedback. I know there's some other, what's the Rodin or whatever, and we've heard a lot of different, Rodan, a lot of different other trolling motors that people have absolutely loved. So we love your feedback. Tell us what you've liked, what your experience has been, and just a good reminder, if your company and you get calls from a customer, return their calls, because I still write they've never returned your call, MotorGuide.
No, yeah, we're back
for the record. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure they hear from a ton of people, so yep. I'm not too surprised. It's a giant company, but yeah, and this will just be the first of many. So I've only had the old Terra now for probably 2 or 3 months, so it's relatively new. And so as I start to learn more features and stuff, I'll be doing like a more detailed review of the pros and cons, and then of the cool, like the features that are like kind of most value for the complexity.
Yep.
Where if you're not like super tech geek, where I'm not reading the manuals, I'm just going out there and using it. But I'll just share some of the things that I found, and yeah, so far I've been happy with it. It's been a solid motor.
What's a manual? What is this manual thing you're talking about?
Something that, yeah, who knows?
Oh. Cool, guys.
Probably why I had to go to the store to figure out how to use the thing. I'm sure it was somewhere in the manual. But
I love it.
That hard.
Yeah,
I skimmed it.
Huh. He's a skimmer. He really reads fast. All right, guys. Hope that was helpful. Leave us some questions. We'll have this over at saltstrong.com. In the fishing tips section is where we keep all of these blogs. And at the very bottom of every individual post, you can leave a question that comes right to us. So if you have any questions, thoughts, you want to call us a knucklehead, whatever, it doesn't really offend us. We'd love to hear your feedback on that. And of course, if you're an insider member, thank you so much. We're getting really close to 26,000 members now in the Insider Club, where we help you save time by putting you in the feeding zone and catching more fish per trip, and also save money on doing things like this. We're going out with our own hard-earned money and buying things, even expensive trolling motors, and just reporting back what has worked and what hasn't worked. We do this with rods, reels, line, lure, hooks, jig heads, etc. So if you want to save money, kind of like the Consumer Reports of saltwater fishing, and get discounts on all of that best tackle, come join us in the Insider Club. And you can find that at saltstrong.com up at the top, little join now button, learn a little bit more, and go annual or monthly. We'd love to have you either way. Most of our members are annual. Some start off monthly and quickly realize, all right, this is for me. I want to save 60%. Yes, 60 by going annual. So, and if you're listening, you're a monthly member and you're like, oh man, I didn't even know about that. Yeah. Like hit us up ASAP. We'd love to get you on annual. Better for us. It helps us go out there and buy more things for you guys when we have the money up front, and you get to save 60%. Yes. 60 by going annual. So that's all at saltstrong.com. Otherwise, we'll talk to you on the next episode. Peace. We out.
See ya.
'Cause fishing, it's in my soul.